Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Elisa Flores. I am a Health and Environmental Science Institute, known as HESI, Scientific Program Manager. And welcome to the Immunosafety Technical Committee's inaugural career webinar. A brief outline of today's agenda is we'll do a brief intro of what is HESI and ITC, go over the immunosafety field, introduce our speakers, and have open Q&A discussion. And a quick guidelines for today is please submit your questions for the speakers using the questions box. You can use the chat box for any private messages for any related issues using direct it to the organizers and panelists only. So a little background of HESI. HESI is a nonprofit scientific foundation based in Washington, DC, has been operating over 30 years internationally. And how our model works is that we convene multi-sector committee members that are from academia, NGOs, clinicians, nonprofit foundations, industry, pharma, CROs, and government research agencies and research institutes. And they come together to really try to bridge that gap of research to translational efforts in order to improve safety and innovation for both human and environmental health. And our four main research focus areas are chemical risk assessment, safe and effective medicines, environmental quality and sustainability, and food safety. We accomplish those through various committees. We have over 16, and immunosafety is one of them here. And how each project kind of operates is these multi-sector members come together to define a problem in the field or a gap and strategically plan it out with various deliverables. And we collect data, do collective analysis, even conduct novel experimental studies, optimize or develop new tools and assays, and come together to write that manuscript. And we also do scientific convenings, whether that's our committee monthly meetings, but also more formal annual meetings and training opportunities as well. Diving into the Immunosafety Technical Committee, known as the ITC, the mission is to identify and address scientific issues related to immune safety and translate to human health and risk assessment. We do that by leveraging technical and scientific expertise of our multi-sector members and contribute to various scientific decision-making processes and also educate stakeholders in safety sciences. I won't go into full detail here, but the Immunosafety Technical Committee, the ITC, breaks down to four major working groups. We have projects under the safety or the regulatory strategies and risk assessment, translational immune safety, methods development, and education outreach, which is hosting this webinar. And each work group has subgroups and different projects. And today this webinar is hosted by the Science Outreach Group. And with that, I would like to quickly thank all of our speakers, Tracy, Wendy, David, and Cheryl, and co-moderator Denise, for being here today. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Tracy Patton-Foos. She is from Charles River. She has her VM PhD, and she's also the ITC Education Outreach Whole Work Group co-lead along with Wendy. And Tracy, did you want to, you can jump in here to give your introduction, and I will give it away to you. Tracy, there you go.
Hello, and welcome to the Immunosafety Career Webinar. This webinar is presented by the HESI ITC's Education Outreach Working Group that I do co-chair with Dr. Wendy Freeburn, a co-panelist. And the purpose of this inaugural webinar is to provide a brief overview of what immunosafety is, introduce you to some scientists that work in immunosafety, and then open up the floor for discussion between speakers and attendees. While we know that graduate students, postdocs, and early career scientists may comprise the majority of our audience, we're also very excited to have those of you that are more experienced, that are looking to learn and or contribute to the discussion about career opportunities in immunosafety. Our hope is that this career webinar provides helpful insight about what immunosafety is and what career opportunities are available in this exciting field. Welcome again, and with that, we'll get started. So, my name is Tracy Patton-Foos, and I have had a long-standing love and excitement about the immune system and have spent well over 25 years of my education experience involved in evaluating immune system changes and developing immunotherapies. I'm an immunologist and pathologist who's worked in early discovery, both as a student and faculty at the university, as well as in industry and preclinical safety assessment. So as outlined here on the slide, my educational journey started with undergraduate training in biology and wildlife. And perhaps because I wanted to do it all, or I couldn't decide what I wanted to do, and to keep my options open, I then went to graduate school and veterinary school. This is where I received my doctorate of veterinary medicine and an immunology-focused master's degree. Continuing on this theme of combining professional training and graduate work, I then completed a combined veterinary pathology residency and PhD in immunology. I finally then entered the job market, where I considered industry briefly due to my interactions with various colleagues that I'd met at scientific meetings that worked in industry, but ultimately decided to give academia a try. I spent several years in a research faculty position, running my very own NIH-funded research laboratory in immunology and doing other professorial things. I then made the jump to a position in industry at a contract research organization laboratory, where I currently am very much a pathologist working in safety assessment. During all of this time, I continued to be involved and participate in various scientific organizations, attend scientific meetings, continuing education and other courses in immunosafety and other related fields, and then also presenting and publishing in various immunosafety topics whenever the opportunities arose. I often comment with the limited understanding, or relatively limited understanding, that we have of the immune system in conjunction with the essential explosion of immunotherapies out there, that I have job security for life. And so there are many career opportunities in the broad field of immunosafety, and I hope that this webinar will provide you with information not only about the field, but also to consider whether a career in immunosafety may be for you. And with that, I'm going to switch to my screen. Apologies. So for the next 10 minutes, I hope to introduce you to the field of immunosafety, what it is, who works in this field, and pathways to get into this field. First and foremost, whenever new drugs, therapies, vaccines, or a variety of other entities are being developed, the evaluation of whether these are safe is required before these can go into humans. Immunosafety is the component of this safety evaluation that focuses on the impacts on the immune system. It occurs throughout development, from early discovery to patients in the clinic, and involves numerous disciplines, data sets, and scientists that all work together to determine safety and risk. You may have heard of the term immunotoxicology, and this has historically been the discipline that is focused on the considerations involved in determining toxic effects on the immune system. However, with the increasing array of immunotherapies that may not have an overtly toxic effect, the term immunosafety has become a term that better reflects and considers all potential effects on the immune system, toxic or otherwise. Importantly, immunosafety also considers effects including the therapeutic actions, disease indication, and an individual's immune response whenever possible.
Tracy, I'm sorry, we can't see your slides.
Oh.
So just go to the sharing and click that.
There, apologies there. So,
perfect.
Okay, would you like me to go back and describe it? Actually, people can read that while I go ahead and move on. So for a new therapy under development, in addition to determining whether it works, is determining whether it is safe. The evaluation of expected and unexpected effects help determine whether the benefits outweigh the risks. Such decisions take into account many factors, including, but not limited to, the disease, current therapy, toxicity, and patient population. So the immune system is extraordinarily dynamic, and its responses can be affected by vaccines, new drugs, therapies, chemicals, medical devices, and other entities that all can affect the immune system. Such entities can simply affect the immune system or be specifically designed to modulate the immune system. In the last decade, there has been a dramatic increase in the number of therapies that are specifically designed to modulate the immune system. Here are just some of the therapies that can have applications in a variety of disease states, including cancer and inflammatory diseases. While it's agreed that assessing the safety of new therapies on the immune system is logically important and necessary, it can also be challenging. One important consideration is that there is a spectrum of potential immune responses within each individual and the population at large. In any given population, there's an average response and both high and low responders that are all within the range of normal. This variability is responsible for the differences that we see with individuals across the population in allergies and autoimmune disease, and can contribute to the susceptibility and response to an infectious disease. Think cytokine storms seen in some people with COVID and not in others. Responses can also differ to additional immunomodulating influences, including age, sex, comorbidities, and the fact that immune responses can and do adapt and change over time. So when determining when safe responses are no longer safe, this can be a difficult endeavor, particularly when you introduce immunotherapies. An immunotherapy could shift an individual outside normal and manifest as immune suppression, which, if too much, could result in increased susceptibility to infections or the development of cancer. Or too much immune stimulation could result in hypersensitivities, development of allergies, anaphylaxis, and a variety of other inflammatory conditions. So as you can imagine, assessing immunosafety involves a collaboration amongst scientists and the integration of data across many disciplines. It occurs throughout the life of any therapy, from discovery through preclinical and up to and including clinical phases. During this time, the immunotoxicologic evaluations occur, which include the evaluation of the phenotype and function of immune cells and pathologic changes in immune organs. Taken together, these data sets help provide a detailed understanding of immune system changes that occur in the context for any given therapy, relevant disease state, and the variability in an individual's immune response. So as you can imagine, immunosafety work involves numerous professionals working together, from bench to bedside. A whole host of scientists, researchers, medical professionals, and regulatory personnel are involved and work collaboratively. The careers and training are diverse, and it is the different expertise and perspectives that these individuals help to provide an integrated understanding of immunosafety for any therapy. So how can you get into a career in immunosafety? There is no one correct way to do so. Rather, there are a large number of ways to enter into immunosafety work, which includes individuals with a variety of backgrounds, disciplines, expertise, educational levels, and experiences. Perhaps the two most common ways for individuals to enter into immunosafety include a background and education in either immunology or toxicology. I can't advise as to which is a better route to take, as there are pros and cons to each, but as an immunologist, I do have a bit of a bias that having an immunology background is particularly helpful, since learning immunology has been described as drinking from a fire hose regarding concepts and learning a new language involving cytokines, interleukins, and CD markers. Although immunology and toxicology are the most common educational backgrounds, there are other ways to gain experience, exposure to, and training in immunosafety. These could include on-the-job training or cross-training, continuing education courses, networking, and a variety of other ways not listed here. Ultimately, it takes a village and a cadre of scientific professionals working together to assess immunosafety, which provides numerous opportunities for individuals with all sorts of backgrounds to enter into the immunosafety work. In summary, immunosafety is a dynamic field that evaluates novel biomedical research advances and addresses public health concerns to determine the effects on the immune system of new therapies, foods, cosmetics, and other chemicals on the immune system. In immunotherapy, the overall safety and for new therapies, whether the benefits outweigh the risks, is evaluated. Ultimately, determining immunosafety for any given therapy, disease entity, or in any patient is a coordinated and collaborative effort between scientists, medical professionals, and regulatory personnel that help provide safe drugs and therapies to patients. At this time, we'll move on to our panel speakers who will introduce themselves before we move on to the discussion portion of the webinar. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Wilkins, and I'm the Scientific Director for Immunology, Molecular Biology, and Biomarkers at Charles River Laboratories at the Safety Assessment Site in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. I also have the pleasure of serving as the project lead for the scientific outreach for the Immunosafety Outreach Working Group. As Tracy just reviewed, there are a lot of different ways you can get into immunosafety, and we're really fortunate to have some great speakers today that have come from a variety of backgrounds that'll give everyone, I think, a really nice overview of different paths to get into immunosafety. Our first speaker is Dr. Wendy Freeburn. Wendy is currently the global lead for hematological and immunological toxicology, say that 3 times fast, with Janssen Therapeutics. And she's got a great background, and we're very, very pleased to have her. So take it away, Wendy.
Thank you. I think that, yep. So you'll see, unlike Denise, most of my career has been in the East Coast. So I was born in Syracuse, and then I went to undergrad south of Rochester, New York in Geneseo, where, I thought going in, I was going to be a biology major with a concentration in education. I was going to teach secondary education. So, right on, I learned that I needed to be flexible with my thoughts and my mindset, and what I thought I wanted to do maybe isn't what I wanted to do. I joined a lab and did some research as an undergrad, and I found out, wow, I want to go on with research. So I then went to the University at Buffalo, where I gained my PhD in microbiology and immunology. But even there, it was quite a diverse background in what I did, because even though I learned a lot of biochemistry, cellular and molecular biology, and immunology, my PhD was actually in molecular parasitology. Elise, next. So yep. After my PhD, I decided again to widen that breadth of experience. And I knew I wanted to do T-cell signaling or molecular biology signaling. Right? I loved that idea of molecules coming together and culminating in gene expression and protein translation. So I switched gears from parasitology and went into T-cell signaling, where I really honed my skills in immunology and molecular biology. Okay. And during my PhD, I was my postdoc, I was lucky enough to be involved with material transfer agreements and CRADAs through bridging programs that NIH had with small biotech companies. And in there, I was introduced to industry, and I decided to then move on to the industry path. And my first job was at Bristol Myers Squibb in Syracuse, New York. I never thought I would be back to my hometown, and there I was. But one constant that in industry is that there is always change. So with that, unfortunately, my division closed in Syracuse, and I moved to New Jersey, where I was the head of the immunotoxicology laboratory there. And I was able to continually increase my matrix leadership across drug safety evaluation and research and development. So really, the move, the change was really awesome for my career. So being open to that change is a huge part of career success. So after 17 years at Bristol Myers Squibb, I made a big change, and I accepted the global position this last March at Janssen as leader of the hemato and immunotoxicology organization. So as you can see, I did gain a wide breadth of experience and leadership, all on the East Coast, and that really lent me to be able to be ready for a more global position. I think next. A lot of people have asked me, why after 17 years? And I was ready. I'd spent a lot of time developing the group at Bristol Myers Squibb, and they were ready for me to leave as well. So so that they could lead. And it was really a now or never thing. I have a very big birthday coming up, and was like, if I'm ever going to switch to another company, I better do it now. And this wonderful opportunity showed up. And we don't need to go over the next slide, Elisa. It's just, it really is just some pointers that, you all can see later on about what I found within my career in pharmaceutical industry have really led to key successes. And some of this is going to come out during the Q&A, so we're not going to go over that right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Our next speaker is Dr. David McMillan. David is a board-certified toxicologist. He's currently a Pharm Tox non-clinical reviewer with US FDA, and I will let him take the rest of his introduction from there. Welcome, and thank you, David.
Thank you for the organizers for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. So as was said, my name is Dave McMillan. I am a Farm Tox reviewer in the Division of Farm Tox for Infectious Diseases at the FDA. I'm assigned for the Division of Antivirals. Just a little background on myself. I was born in Illinois, grew up in Kansas, so I'm from the Midwest. But I moved to Nashville, Tennessee for college. I graduated from Vanderbilt University with a bachelor's in biomedical engineering in 2006. And then from there, I went straight to Rochester, New York, Western New York, where I attended the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry and received a PhD from the toxicology program in 2013. And from there, I moved to Burlington, Vermont, and was a postdoc in the Vermont Lung Center until the end of 2015, and the beginning of 2016. Then I moved to Rockville, Maryland, and joined the FDA. And as my career is mostly focused on toxicology, although the lab I actually was a member of at the University of Rochester was an immunology lab. So most of my training was toxicology, but I have a very strong graduate training in immunology purely because most of the research that was being conducted was true immunology. So in my current position at the FDA, I am a non-clinical reviewer. So what that means is that I am a reviewer of new drugs as they come in, either as INDs or pre-INDs, or NDAs or BLAs or supplements. Anything that comes in into the Office of New Drugs within CDER will be disseminated into the individual clinical review disciplines. And I am one of the many reviewers assigned to reviewing the non-clinical safety data. So this includes animal studies, in vitro studies, and reproductive toxicology studies, and all of the above. And then I, along with all of the other disciplines, including clinical and virology in the case of our division, product quality and clinical pharmacology and so forth, we are all involved in making decisions on whether or not clinical trials should be safe to proceed, whether drugs should be approved, biologics should be licensed, and so forth. And I love my job. It's different every day, and I'm really grateful to be part of this organization. So that's all that I have at the moment, but when questions come up, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks so much, David. We appreciate your background. Our final formal speaker is Dr. Cheryl Rockwell. She's currently an associate professor with the Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology at Michigan State University. She is also the acting director of the Applied Immunology Center for Education and Research. So thank you, Cheryl, and welcome.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you for inviting me. So I started my immunotoxicology research lab at Michigan State about 10 years ago, and I went through the tenure process about 4 years ago. But before that, of course, as a graduate student, I received my PhD in pharmacology and toxicology from Michigan State. So it's the same department that I'm working in now. But in between that time, I did 2 postdocs. So I did a postdoc in an immunology lab at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And then I also did a postdoc with Dr. Kurt Klassen in a toxicology lab at the University of Kansas Medical Center. So now as a mentor, I'm a big believer in internships and external workshops. So most of the graduate students and postdocs in my lab have done one or the other or both of these things. And I am delighted to answer any questions about academia. I can also talk about sort of some of the unique twists and turns that happen during people's careers. There are some problems that sort of disproportionately impact women, although they're increasing in incidence in men now too. So things like what's called like the trailing spouse. So I was a trailing spouse, and what that means, if you're not familiar with it, it means that your spouse, the person that you married, is more advanced in their career, and so more senior in their career, and then they end up taking a position somewhere in a different geographical location than you're currently located, and this usually represents a significant advancement in their career, and so then you end up following them. when this happens, it's a problem for both spouses, really, because you kind of have to figure out what's going to be strategic in your career development, because we're at a place now where women don't just have jobs, they have careers, right? So you can't, if you're in immunotoxicology, you can't just get a job anywhere. You're looking for something strategic that's going to advance your career. For me, this ended up working out really well. I found 2 great postdocs in Kansas City, which was not my part of my original career plan, but it allowed me then to write a transitional grant, and that transitional grant was really instrumental in sort of launching my career. And so that kind of led to the next problem, which also has a slogan, which is the 2-body problem, which means that you've got 2 spouses who are both looking for positions in the same geographical location. And when you're in an area that's specialized, like pharmacology, toxicology, immunology, these positions aren't just anywhere, right? So my husband and I are both pharmacologists, toxicologists, and he works in the liver, I work in the immune system. So it takes a lot of careful thought and strategy when you're doing this during your career. So in addition to that, I can talk about writing transitional grants if you're interested in starting your own academic immunotoxicology lab, because that can be very helpful, or at least sort of thinking about how you're going to put together grant applications can be really useful for interviewing. And let's see, I can also talk a lot about work-life balance, because of course that's a problem for anybody, or maybe not a problem, it's an issue that has to be addressed for anybody who has a family, whether that's kids or you just want to make sure you're getting enough time with your spouse, because jobs in immunotoxicology and immunosafety can be very demanding, and they're also fun, right? That's why we're here. we really enjoy what we're doing. And between those 2 things, you can end up devoting far more time than you're even realizing to your job. And so you have to make sure that that everything is balancing out in the end. So with that, I will stop.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, and thank you to all of our other panelists. I think at this point, I will transfer it back over to Elisa to go through some of our discussion and Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I would ask all the speakers to please finally put back on their cameras for the Q&A. Okay, and so just a reminder to please submit your questions using the questions box and not the chat box. And thank you for submitting questions in advance. And, you know, just to remind everyone, this will be recorded and will be shared with all the attendees. And the first question will go to Cheryl. You know, we wanted to ask a question, did you have any other mentors besides your PhD advisor, and how did they assist you?
I've had many, many mentors throughout my career. So I found them really valuable. Basically, anytime I have made a major career transition, which has been several times now, I have touched base not only with my PhD advisor and my postdoc advisor, but also with other faculty at various stages of their career. And I found that really helpful. I'd also make sure I touch base with female faculty too, because sometimes the responsibilities that they have can be slightly different than my more senior male advisors, where they may have had fewer childcare responsibilities when they were starting out their careers than sort of junior faculty now do. And so I found that really valuable. I've also used mentors for learning new scientific techniques and things like that, and that's also been very helpful.
Great, thank you. And Dave, same question to you. You know, what other mentors have you had that helped you throughout your career?
So I'm going to have to keep this short, but I honestly could write a book on this. So the concept of a mentor has always been a funny one to me, because that sort of implies that you have like an Obi-Wan Kenobi figure who's teaching you everything and guiding you through every stage of your whole training. And that's not true at all. That's not how it works. You should really consider anyone that you meet who has helped you in any substantial way to be a part of your network. And for me, that's included not just my PhD and postgraduate or postdoctoral advisors, but every member of the labs that I've worked in. I've been very fortunate in working in labs where everyone has been incredibly intelligent and driven and capable, and I could trust any one of them to have done my work for me. And that includes graduate students, postdocs, research assistant professors, technicians. I mean, technicians run the labs. They really are the ones who are going to be teaching you hands-on right at the beginning. It's like nurses in hospitals. I mean, they wouldn't work without technicians. Plus, anyone you meet who is not in your immediate circles within your graduate or postgraduate careers is going to potentially be of assistance or will show up at some point down the road. And I honestly have two cases on this phone call. Alyssa and I were members of the same lab in Rochester, although not at the same time. We didn't overlap, but it's interesting to see how our careers have sort of paralleled each other up to this point. And before that, earlier on in my graduate career, Wendy Freeburn, who was located in Syracuse at the time, Bristol Myers Squibb had a relationship with the U of R, and I had met Wendy at some point through a liaison program that BMS had set up. So you never know how your paths are going to cross and who can be of assistance. And the last thing I would add is that from a lecture that I saw Anthony Fauci give at FDA a couple of years before the pandemic started, and he was obviously very well established in his career, but he wasn't the superstar that he is today. And the very first thing he said in his talk was, be nice to everyone, because you never know who your boss is going to be one day. That's number one rule of politics. And it's true here too. So I hope that's of help.
Yes, it really does really help. Okay, so the next question I have here is for you again. It's for Cheryl, sorry. How did you first transition from academia to your first job from your postdoc on?
For me, it was a little bumpy because my husband and I were both looking for positions in the same geographical location, and we're both in academia, and we're both actually faculty in departments of pharmacology. So that's asking a lot. So I was offered a job in Kansas City to run an academic lab at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And that's something that we could have done. And my husband and I we talked a lot about it. But it really probably wouldn't have been an optimal position. It was a very small research program that they had there. So what we ended up doing is a nationwide search. We both did job searches at the same time. We both had grant money, which I think helped a lot. And it took a little bit of time, but we eventually found a place where we both got positions at the same time. And then as far as transitioning to running a lab, it was important to figure out how to manage people. That was I remember that being a big learning curve. Hiring people, figuring out who would be the right people for these jobs. And then also running a big lab budget was significantly different than operating within my previous postdoc budgets. And I'll stop there so that we get to other questions.
Thank you, Cheryl. And the next question is for Wendy. What can those interested in the area gain skills in order to transition to, the immunosafety field, but also to industry?
Okay, so, if you're interested in a career in pharma, what I'm going to share with you right now are really some soft skills. Because I come from more of an immunology background, and I learned the toxicology, and as Tracy already mentioned, we all come to immunosafety in different ways. So I want to kind of focus on some of the soft skills. And there are, when entering pharma, there are many avenues to go within pharma. Some are lab-based, some are not lab-based. there's really too many directions that you could go, but for immunosafety, usually it is lab-based. There are some organizations that do outsource all of the immunosafety, but really the keys, regardless of whether you're going to be at the bench or you're going to be a subject matter expert, are that you've already honed a really high critical thinking capacity. That's really key for success. Develop your ability to think quickly, taking in mind multiple parameters and facets of each situation. Conversations move very fast in pharma, and so you really want to hone in on that ability to think quick and take in the facets. Also, in pharma, projects change quickly. For business reasons and many other reasons, often programs are dropped and others come on very quickly that have very tight deadlines. So having this breadth of experience and learning is key. And we'll probably go over that a little bit more later, hopefully, on how to gain that breadth of experience. But I do think you want to be able to grab on right now onto any new opportunities to learn. This will help because it not only increases your breadth of knowledge, but it also increases that ability to think critically that we just talked about, and it allows for more flexibility to grab onto new opportunities even in pharma. So train your brain for a learning mindset right now that accepts the flexibility and finds solutions during times of change.
And so that kind of coincides with the next question for you, Wendy, is that looking back, what is something you could have done in order to prepare yourself? You mentioned critical thinking. There are some courses on science communication. So what would be like kind of a few key things briefly that you would suggest?
Oh, the last soft skill would have been learn how to work on a team, right? And when we're getting our PhDs, often you're very an individual contributor. I was very lucky to be able to mentor other students, but I didn't ever have an experience where a shared objective across organizations was going to happen. So learning how to work on a team, it takes effort. We often think that's an innate ability, that we learned it in kindergarten, but it's not. And I think to respect that need for the effort in order to be a key member is really important. It just doesn't happen. And that is something that I wish I knew joining the workforce, because I almost was surprised by how much effort and energy it took. I was one of those people that truly believed it was innate, and it's not.
I also wanted to add one comment that in addition to, and I guess as Wendy was outlining, moving into industry, that collaborative effort, the soft skills are things that are things you may not have been exposed to as much if you say in academia. That was a real transition for me. I was very happy for it because I liked working in a collaborative environment. But one thing to think about is that you likely have a lot of the science already. It may be called different things in industry. So there's different names. And so familiarizing yourself with some of the names and going, well, I know how to do that. They just call it something different in industry, or they approach it slightly differently. Educating yourself about that can help move or allow you to understand what sort of transition, at least from the science part. Because I mean, if you have a PhD in training in immunology, et cetera, that you already have exposure to the science part. It's those soft skills, as Wendy was talking about, and communication and working across teams. That will be that more of the transition, rather than I'm going to have to learn a lot of new immunology techniques and concepts, et cetera. You still have to learn that, but that was probably the most surprising thing to me, moving from academia to industry, is that I knew some of the stuff, but it was a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Wendy, Tracy. And moving to the next question about interviewing, we got a couple live questions about it and submitted questions about interviewing. And so I'll pose this question to Dave for the FDA. What are the key things when interviewing, and what other things are involved? And I think you're going to mention networking, so excited to hear about it.
Yeah, well, networking, of course, is everything. I think there are certainly things that I would recommend that people not do in interviews. I think the kiss of death for me in an interview is basically when I or someone I know who is involved in the hiring is asking a potential employee, why are you interested in this job? The answer that I've gotten before, which I personally do not like, is, well, I was looking to move to this area of the country and I saw that you guys were hiring. I've seen this more times than you can think. And it's, to me, that shows no interest at all in the kind of work that we do. And frankly, I find it a bit disrespectful. I also have seen people show up wearing t-shirts. They don't come prepared. They aren't taking notes. They don't have any questions prepared for me or those around me. These are all things that I would recommend not doing. Also focusing also on how to write a good resume and a good cover letter. These are all skills just in general that I find very important and that people don't, more than I would have expected, don't know how to do this. And for FDA specifically, I think the question is going to come up about postdocs, I think. For FDA specifically, all of the work that we do, it really is on the job training. There is really no way to learn how to be an FDA reviewer without just doing it. So what we're really looking for is, first of all, a good education, a scientific background, particularly in the field of whichever division you're applying for, and also personability, being able to work as a team, just knowing that that you work well with others and that you get along with people. And I mean, there's so many skills, but also for experience. Within FDA specifically, it's not required that you have a postdoc, or that you have any experience out of graduate school, although it does affect your pay grade for incoming. So if you don't have the experience that they want you to have, then you may be downgraded coming in. Minimum 2 years experience would be what we're looking for, ideally. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be hired. You just may not be compensated to the level that you would deserve to be coming out with a PhD. But yeah, generally 2 years experience. I feel like maybe that was a bit of a tangent on my part, but I hope that was addressing the question.
Yeah, and the next question is about networking. To you, Dave, and then we'll jump to
me.
Yeah.
Network. That is everything. Do not be shy. I have struggled in my past with anxiety issues, social anxiety issues. I remember when I was a graduate student, I was really afraid to go up to people and say hi. And it turns out that, I mean, that is very hard to do when you're first starting out because, at least from my perspective, it's like you're a nobody. I mean, who wants to talk to me? But the truth is that people are really eager to meet other people. They're as interested in expanding their own networks as you are. And people really enjoy talking about what they do in this field. It's maybe different in other fields, but in my experience, just going up to talking to somebody for 5 minutes that you've never met before, it can be incredibly valuable and not as difficult as it seems. So if you have anxiety over reaching out and talking to someone, either in person or by phone or by email, I say this as respectfully as I can, get over it. It's for your own good.
Yeah, and I can just jump in quickly about networking. You know, Dave and I, we're in the same lab, and fellow grad students in our lab have really helped me personally out with cover letters and networking. So definitely your first networker is your fellow grad students, so take advantage. And then I just really quickly want to jump so we get to the industry questions. We've got a few of them popping up here. are postdocs necessary for industry and what skills are needed for industry? So Wendy, please take away this question and we'll jump to Tracy after. Tracy, you're on mute.
Wendy, did you want to lead with that, or did you want me to start?
You're still on mute. So Tracy, did you want to just take a first dive at that?
Sure. So yeah, I kind of did a combined PhD postdoc because of my veterinary training, and so it kind of, it really depends. It depends on the position you're applying for, and the type of expertise. And I think what Dave was saying about pay grades, et cetera, that will all influence it. You have to also think about the pool of individuals that you may be competing against. And so if you're interested in doing a postdoc to gain experience and or publications, that's very helpful. In my job, and again, I have a slightly different flair because the fact that I'm a veterinary pathologist and that's my primary job in industry, that there's not an expectation necessarily to publish, but I'm hungry to publish and gain exposure, book chapters, those sorts of things. And I think having publications will help set you up, and postdoc experience to give you that, broader breadth of knowledge. If you're really interested in becoming, immunosafety oriented and be involved in toxicology, having a postdoc with exposure to toxicology when you have training in immunology, that would be wonderful. And vice versa, if you're in toxicology, you want to, and gain some experience to immunology, that all would be very helpful. With that said, it's, we all recognize that you could be in postdocs probably in forever, and eventually you want to have a job. And so weighing that that gaining additional expertise versus just kind of jumping and starting the process, that's really a personal decision and based on the fact of what or the type of position that you're looking at and what their expectations are. So it's a time. It's really a time equation. So, and I know Wendy has some thoughts on this as well. So I'll go ahead and hand it over. Oh, good.
Yeah. So, again, this is from an R&D pharma perspective. Having a postdoc is extremely beneficial. It grows your critical thinking capacity as well as the breadth and depth of your scientific experiences. Remember earlier we were talking about some of the soft skills needed, and that was critical thinking, and that breadth and depth, and then the breadth and depth of your scientific experiences really allows you some flexibility if programs change to hop on to another program. I think a postdoc cements what you know and don't know in the larger scientific community. And when you're thinking of stepping out to be a postdoc, definitely expand your horizons for that maximum benefit, especially if industry is really in your future. I think the more that you expand what you know, the better. And in my hiring experience, we rarely hired PhDs without a postdoc. I think this market is a little bit different right now. It's very hot. I think you could go in with a decent level without that postdoc for some of the positions available. But in the past, for sure, I can count out of almost over 30 people, one of them that I hired without a postdoc.
Thank you, Wendy. And I actually will do the opposite coin. Denise, our moderator, actually didn't do a postdoc just like me, so would love to hear her perspective on that too.
Yeah, we're the odd women out here on this one, Elisa. I think they're all really valid points. I had a very unconventional career progression. Out of my bachelor's degree, I worked for several years in academic labs and worked full-time getting my master's degree, and then quickly decided to pivot to a PhD. With the full intent of going into industry, I never had any eyes on trying to pursue an academic career. When I graduated with my PhD, I had two options. I had a postdoc lined up at the National Cancer Institute, and then there was an opening at the Charles River Laboratories in Reno, Nevada, where I'd done my graduate work, which gave me an opportunity to kind of jump straight into an industry-like position. Granted, CROs are kind of their own animal relative to a full-blown industry position. But But at the end of the day, it was trying to make a candid decision about, okay, where do I ultimately want to be and what is going to give me the best foundation for getting there. So at that point, I'd seen several of my friends on their second and third postdocs who were trying to make that leap into industry. Granted, this was quite a while ago and the market wasn't anywhere. It was towards the end of the financial downturn, so the market is very different now than it was back when I finished graduate school. But I made the decision to jump into a CRO, and a lot of the experience that I gained there is consistent with kind of the maturation that you would expect to receive during the course of a postdoc. It was meeting a lot of people. It was learning to work in a team. It was those critical thinking skills that Wendy hammered on. In the CRO, I have the unique ability or the unique opportunity to meet a lot of really smart people with from a lot of different countries, a lot of different companies. And that in turn gave me the opportunity to branch off and ultimately work in biopharma for a couple of years before coming back. So no one path is the right way. I think it's having a clear goal in mind with where you would like to end up, and jumping and making the best out of any opportunity that you've got along the way.
Well said, Denise.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. And just jumping topics here, we have a question for Cheryl here about funding in the immunosafety field. So how can you go about it? And what was your successes and challenges?
Yeah, so funding is both a challenge and an opportunity. I personally like writing grants. I find it's kind of fun because it means we've got data and we're embarking on a new project. So for graduate students, I think it's really valuable to write a pre-doctoral fellowship, which I did. You can write NIH fellowships, and that gets your feet wet. It's a really great way to kind of get started. There's also a really great pre-doctoral fellowships. Foundational. So like American Heart Association, they do some immunology fellowships. There's a pharma fellowships. There's quite a few out there to look at. Postdocs also have fellowships, but you can then also write transitional grants. And so those are really helpful. I wrote a K-99, which is a wonderful opportunity for postdocs of any nationality. A great way to get your foot in the door into a tenure track academic position, if that's where you're headed. For me, what was really helpful in getting started was I had a lot of mentors on my grants. And so I said specifically, I was getting advice on these immunological assays from these mentors, and I was getting advice from toxicological aspects of the grant from these people. And then I also had kind of like focus groups where I said, okay, if I switch my hypothesis from A to B, do you like that better or not as well? I did those kinds of things to sort of make the grant more marketable before I put it out.
Great, thank you. And then the next question is for Tracy. Since you have both sides of the coins of being in academia and industry, what advice would you give to like a first-year grad student interested in this field versus a more senior grad student or postdoc?
So for if you're just entering the field, gaining as much experience and exposure to immunology is important, obviously, but then attending meetings and going to alternative sessions and networking with people that you're interested or intrigued by what they might be doing. So reaching out to individuals in that area. I mean, I think I was maybe a second-year graduate student when I went to an AAI meeting, and I went to a session that was on, I can't even remember what it was on, but there was a veterinarian that was talking, and it was like pathology, immunology, and she and I just hit off, and she was a mentor for years, and she was like one of the colleagues that she's like, you really need to come into industry, you can do this and this and this, and I'm like, I don't know, I want to stay in academia, I want to run my own research lab, but she was always there kind of whispering in my ear and showing me that it wasn't just the typical route that I had seen and talked with my mentors about, you know, continuing on, and then you get a research lab, and then you become a professor, and then and then you retire and you die, sort of thing. And so I really, to have my world opened up, and so I would encourage, especially with technology and, you know, all the information that's out there, that you can acquire that information and reach out and network it in a way that's just amazing right now. And so acquire that information that's not just immunology focused, to expose yourself to the possibilities. I really didn't understand the variety of possibilities when I was looking initially, and now in retrospect, I wish that I would have done that. I mean, it was a different time, a different space, but I encourage all of you trainees, whether you're just starting graduate programs in whatever capacity, or you're towards the end, in addition to the networking, just like continue to drink from the overall fire hose of all of this information about immunology, immunotoxicology, immunosafety, toxicology, all the aspects, and think outside the box compared to maybe what you're hearing in your graduate program, which, I mean, there's a lot more openness to alternative careers, et cetera, compared to, say, when I was going through, where, I mean, you were kind of a black sheep if you strayed outside of your typical routine for academia. And I think the landscape has changed, which I think is for the better, which is wonderful. So just get out there and learn that information, and see and feel what potentially resonates with you. And if you find something you're like, well, that sounds like a really cool job, I don't know what they do, but maybe I'll reach out to them, do it. LinkedIn is amazing. It didn't exist when I was going through this. And so take advantage of all of those opportunities and the ways to connect with people.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And quickly, fit in a few last questions here. To Wendy, someone asked, you know, is grant writing still used in industry and formal writing? And, you know, I think you made a comment, Wendy, about early career scientists also transitioning to the field, not just trainees. So if you want to comment that quickly.
So commenting on, you know, today is really focused a lot on PhDs, but there are many opportunities in immunosafety for all different levels of education. So please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us to discuss those as well. And then I'm sorry, about grant writing. Is there grant writing in industry? So interestingly enough, many R&Ds in pharma have things called innovation grants. So although nowhere near as intensive as what Cheryl does, we still do have to apply for monies sometimes. So you know, having that skill set of being able to have a hypothesis, what are your aims, what are you going to do with the money if you're given it, and be able to be concise and clear over that, it is important in pharma as well. So good question.
All right, thank you. And is there any final words before we do our closing remarks from anybody that wants to mention anything else? All right, and we did get one question about HESI internships. So some committees do some internships, and so please follow us on LinkedIn at the Health and Environmental Science Institute. We do post any opportunities about that there. And with that, I would like to thank everybody, and I'll kick it off to Denise for our closing remarks.
Thanks so much. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of our speakers as well as our ITC outreach members. I'm relatively new as a project leader, but I definitely would like to recognize Ashwini Fadnis-Moge, who is our former leader. I kind of carried this across the finish line, but she was really integral in the planning and organization of this webinar, as well as our other outreach members, Darcy Clark, Nikki Marshall, Dan Weinstock, Andrew McDermott, Wendy, and Tracy, of course, who are two of our speakers today. We are always looking for new members to join, so please feel free to reach out to Elisa or Charmaine or any of us if you have any questions about how to participate in the HESI ITC programs. We also wanted to mention that this is the first of what will be hopefully many webinars that are both career-based as well as scientific outreach. So there'll be access to the website. And then we're also going to be developing a mentor-mentee program that we hope to launch in 2022. So please feel free to reach out to any of us or Elisa. I was also remiss on the outreach members. I'd like to acknowledge Elisa and Charmaine, our two amazing program managers. None of this would be possible without either of you. You wrangle all of us cats onto calls and keep us organized, and we're very appreciative of that.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And like Denise said, we do have upcoming webinars and events and this mentor-mentee program. So next week, you should get a survey for all the attendees with the recording, with the survey for feedback. And in that survey, you'll be able to sign up if you haven't for our listserver and for the new mentor-mentee program that we were developing. And also we have a new LinkedIn page with multiple resources. It's new, so not much there yet, but we're going to be posting all those different resources and for education and outreach specifically. So stay tuned for that email next week to all of you. And with that, I would also like to acknowledge my co-ITC manager, Charmaine Mitchell-Ryan. Please email us if you have any questions about joining. We're always looking for new experts, early career scientists, and some trainees to join as well. So please email us if you would like to join a specific committee or work group. So with that, I would like to thank you guys. Bye. Thank you all the speakers and attendees. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
thank you.